Slack channel. Just started the live stream. Okay. Alright, so I just put that notice out to Slack that I'm streaming, and obviously here I am streaming. Yesterday's was kind of a shorter stream. I think today's might be as well. I don't want to belabor a point here or spend a whole lot of time on it. I'm just going to give you some key ideas and some instructions for how to finish things this week. So I am, I'm here. Hello. Oh, Becca just said hi. Great, thanks. I appreciate that because sometimes I do these and it's like I don't know if anyone's watching or I don't know who is watching. So it's good to see somebody's out there. That's great. So yeah. Let's see. It's a nice sunny day. My garden is growing. That's exciting. The bird feeder seems to be doing a good job of feeding the birds and not the squirrels. That's the new bird feeder I got from a neighbor who was giving it away. Several bird nests in our yard, including one on our front porch. We've been watching a robin up there, and I think there's sparrows that have built a nest inside the swing set, my kid's swing set. So that's kind of risky, but hopefully they'll be all right. It's the time of year to do a lot of yard work. I ordered this. This is a, I don't know what to tell you on this, I don't care, but I ordered a string trimmers cartridge. I need to do some weed eating in my backyard and just tried out the string trimmer I ordered and it doesn't work. So, I mean, it doesn't fit my trimmer, so I need to return that, I guess, and get the right kind. So, it's kind of a hassle. But that's all right. Anyway, yeah, good to see some people watching. 3 viewers, all right, I'll take it. I'll go ahead and get started with some actual content. So today is the last day of streaming for the week. This is week 3, but you may still be working on things. You may, or maybe you're done. I don't know. But this is the final day of kind of like new content that I'm going to talk about on a stream. I of course will be around. But everything is due ideally tomorrow night, which is Friday. So I'll talk about what everything is, what I mean by that. Make sure you know what you need to do to get those things done. And then we'll move on. We have one more full week, and then the week 5 is kind of a half week. But that's really just wrapping it up. And there's just one thing during week 5. So yeah, I've recorded videos and left a lot of feedback on all of your web literacy articles. So take a look at those. I have a couple of general suggestions that I also want to add, and then I've given you all very specific recommendations for each of those articles. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. Sorry. So let's take a look at some of that actually before I move on any further. They all looked pretty good as far as getting, they're all what I would say is a good start. And so I've added some suggestions to help them be stronger. One thing I didn't figure out until kind of later is that you can actually, let's see, am I showing what I need to? Yeah, okay. My stream playback is very slow, so I don't actually see myself on the playback. So hopefully you can see this Google Doc that I'm looking at here. Hang on, I'm going to change a setting on my playback here. Okay, that's a little better. Yeah, if it gets weird again, let me know and I'll try to change it back if I need to. The streaming, the bit rate on the stream doesn't look great, so I'm not sure why. In any case, hopefully you can see this, or maybe you're watching it later and the bit rate doesn't matter. This is a picture of a tweet embedded in Group 3's article, and this is not anything wrong you did, don't worry. But I want to show you what I figured out. I don't know why I didn't notice this before. In Google Docs, when you select an image like I've done here with a left click, you can right click and I want to make sure that the pop-up shows up because I'm capturing a window, not my desktop. Can you see that? I can't hover away from it or else. Oh yeah, I think you can see it. Okay, good. I wasn't sure what OBS was picking up, but if you right click on this, then you can add alt text. So please do that. This is really important on any image that you include in an article like this, and also on your website, but especially here. Select the alt text option, and in this pop-up here, describe what this is. So this is a screenshot of a tweet. I'm gonna go ahead and just do this one for you all, by Kyle Bass, and this is well, I'll go ahead and I'll give it a longer title, describing the event in question, and full text of tweet. So can I move that? Okay, so the purpose of adding an alt text, this is actually going to add an attribute to the image. The purpose of this is so that if a reader is accessing this document and they can't actually read it, like visually, like they can't see it, then the computer, their computer will be configured to read this instead of showing them an image. So we want to make sure that this is actually descriptive, and because there's some important evidence of what's going on in this tweet, we definitely want to include this. So we want to make sure that somebody reading your article can access this text that is so crucial in your story here. So Chinese spy team. It sounds, I mean, this guy's description of it sounds a lot more exciting than it actually probably was. So infectious disease facility in Canada for sending pathogens to the Wuhan facility. The husband specialized in coronavirus research. Coronavirus China. Corona. I tend to get the vowels. It takes me a couple times with the vowels usually to get it right. Okay, so facilities typo. We just want to make sure you don't add any typos. But this is now going to show up. Like we won't see it. Like you don't see a difference when you're accessing it right, like the way we are. But what we're talking about is someone else, a screen reader, who might be seeing that. Every single image that you include should have an alt description like that. And if there is any text in your image, you should include that text in the description of the image. So please do that for all of them. The other thing I wanted to be clear about with these, or I want you to make sure you're being clear about, is, and I really every article you should pay attention to this, to how you're describing coronavirus itself, because just to be clear about it, there are, and I'm not personally that well versed in the medical science of this, but from what I gathered, there is COVID-19, which is a disease, and then there's the virus, which is SARS-CoV-2, that causes the disease COVID-19. Generically, we refer to this as the coronavirus, but technically a coronavirus is a category of viruses or a family of viruses, and there are several. This is one of them, and it's a new one. So talking about it is, we want to make sure we're being clear as much as possible. Most of the time, I think, especially within the article, if you're just talking about the coronavirus, we all know what you're talking about. But perhaps in this description or the summary or the question, you want to make sure to use the correct terminology if you can. Let's see. Yeah, this article was really challenging, I think. But so COVID-19 is the disease. So I think actually that is probably the right title for yours, because that's the weaponized part of this virus, I suppose. You could add to this though. Maybe let's say is COVID-19 or maybe slash. I don't know. Slashes are awkward. I don't like those. I'm not gonna suggest adding to that. I think adding it here probably makes more sense. Or the novel coronavirus. There it is with the vowel. O's and A's trip me up. Coronavirus. Or novel. Coronavirus is probably not a proper name. Novel coronavirus. SARS-CoV-2. All right, so that that's check your article to make sure that you're using the right terms if you need to. Okay, so overall, it was really I really enjoyed reading your articles and learning some of the stuff you found. A couple of the final sort of generic comment is always make sure you're citing your sources. If you did find some of the fact-checking info from a fact-checking website like Snopes or factcheck.org or something like that, make sure you acknowledge that whenever you're talking about it. And it's fine to use those sources, but you have to cite them. So please do that. That's very important. Okay, so yeah, this is pretty good. This one, I think you all struggled with this one, Group 6, and I did too, actually, because I did see this claim and I thought, well, surely it's at least somewhat widespread. It may not be, it turns out, but there is some evidence of it being used, and in my video for you all, I did find some and show it to you, but it does seem like a little bit more fringe than some of these other things, which is great, actually. I think it's great too that we can go ahead and discredit this before it gets widespread, right? Maybe that's something that's a good reason to do it. Okay, so I do want to talk a bit about media archaeology today, and this is the article that is in, or it's an essay. This is the essay that's in Canvas for you to read related to media archaeology and talking about specifically domestic media devices, which is what you're probably choosing for this project. That if you consider the phone, I think a lot of you are going to do phones. That's a kind of domestic media device. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about, or that the article is also kind of talking about. But let's actually let me start off by talking a bit about the schedule and just making sure you all see what I would like for you to have completed by the end of this week, and maybe even glance ahead. So take a look at the schedule. So week 1, week 2 is web literacy, week 3 is where we are now, and these are the 2 things that you need to make sure that you have completed by tomorrow. You have the object lesson project, which I can take a look at here if you have any questions, and then of course the week 3 reflection, which is the normal thing that we do. And let me just make sure that I have enabled submissions for this, and I have, yeah. Okay, so same drill for this one as you've done for weeks 1 and 2. Talk about what you've done, and you've got lots of different options. It's not really that important to me how you reflect on this, but I want to see that you do. So please reflect on this. In addition, this isn't an assignment to turn in, but I would like for you to try to complete the revisions to your web literacy article by this week if you can. If you can't, it's okay to focus on the object lesson, but I do want to get those web literacy articles cleaned up and polished and perfect as much as possible, as soon as possible. So please try to do that this week as well. And if you do, of course, talk about that in your reflection of what you did this week for week 3. Okay, so if there are any questions about what to do this week, please let me know. You can chat you can chat in Slack or whatever else. I'm just checking my OBS here. It looks like I'm not showing you my whole browser, so I'm going to make a little adjustment here. Not that it matters that much, but let me just kind of squeeze this in. Sorry, I just like to have it balanced a little better. Yeah, and you can see Bill Gates back there. That's unrelated to today. I was looking at something else. Okay, so this is that's the week, and that's that's it for this week. So let's talk about media archaeology, and this is a little different. This reading that I've assigned is different because it's a scholarly essay, and I don't do a lot of that in this class. I like to show you things that are a bit more accessible. So as a work of scholarship, it's not written like a textbook. It's not, its main audience is other scholars, scholars of media history, and in this case, that's the target. And that's, so you may find it a little challenging in some cases. You might be using terminology that's a bit specialized. But I actually don't think it's that specialized. I think it's a pretty accessible article, and that's why I liked it. I keep saying article, but it's really an essay. It was a chapter contributed to a book, and I also contributed a chapter to that book. about the Channel F game console. But this is Erkki Hutamo's contribution to that. And what I love about this is it's a book about video game history. Can I open? I don't want to open it like that. Let me see. I want to open it in the web browser. It's a book. It's a book about video game history, and this is an essay that takes us back to the Victorian era. So I love that it's giving us this longer history of video games. I mean, I can tell you all about the history of video games, and most of the time when I do that, when we talk about like what was the first video game, there's actually 4 different candidates for that, and we could talk about those some other time maybe. Or you can take my games and culture class, which is about that. But you could look at 1940s maybe, and that's really an outlier. But 1950s is when we have things that are probably making a pretty strong case for being a video game and recognizable in the sense that what we would think of as a video game. And so that certainly it's a 20th century technology. If we think of it as a technology. But what's great about Erkki Hutamo's essay is that this is showing us that a video game is not a technology, it's a cultural practice, or it's a set of behaviors. And that's what lets him create this much longer prehistory for it that goes back into the 19th century, so the 1800s. And this is fascinating. I love this. So I do find it pretty accessible and interesting. That said, this is kind of something I also study and talk about, so that's maybe why I find it that interesting. But I think maybe giving you an example of what's different about this approach might help a little bit, because this is the kind of thing I hope you're paying attention to if you're choosing option 2 for the object lesson project. So that's the lived history option. If that's what you're going to be doing, you should definitely read this article carefully. Because he's giving you a lot of the things that you will probably also be noticing and unpacking about your object if you choose to do that. So let's try an example. I usually do this with my Game Boy, but I left it in my office, which I haven't been to that often. I actually went there yesterday, but I forgot to pick up my Game Boy. But I do have a thing. Am I showing you this? Can you see this? Let me check my playback. Yeah, there we go. So this is a Wiimote, right? This is the Wiimote. This is the style that goes with the. I think anyway. This is the original style, right? I actually don't remember. But this is a Wiimote, and this is something he mentions here in this article actually, that he's noting though that this is not just the surface. So he says, wildly waving the Wii remote in a living room sports session may seem an act of spontaneous fun or a liberatory foray into a virtual Neverland. And he says, although this is true on the surface, there's always more behind it. So this is the more. This is the behind it that media archaeology is interested in finding. And his metaphor of the grocery store, I think, is a pretty good example. So the shopper, right? So the shopper at the grocery store feels like they're making their own choices, that they're just there acting on free will, but of course all their choices have been pre-chosen for them. Their pathway through the store has been designed carefully by supermarket designers, by retail designers, to help the shopper make choices that are good for the grocery store. So that's something that impacts every aspect of our life, like education, like syllabus design, like furniture design, and it's that all of those intersecting choices and influences that converge on a specific object that we're interested in here. So the Wiimote, let's think about the things that this Wiimote signifies besides play, besides the idea that you can play with this. So let's think about it. So this is an object. It has several attributes that we could talk about just kind of generically. This is about 6 inches long, or tall, I guess. About 1.25 inches wide. Weighs maybe 5 or 6 ounces. I'm just guessing, but it has batteries in it, so that's part of the weight. It has 2 screws here. I'm sure you can't see them, but there are 2 screws in here, and these are tri-wing screws, and so that means they look kind of like a Phillips head, but with 3, so it goes 3 ways. My tri-wing screwdriver is at school, unfortunately, so I am not able to actually open this up and look on the inside, but I kind of don't need to say some things about it. The fact that it has tri-wing screws is one of these other things that are influencing this object. The tri-wing screw here is Nintendo's way of saying you should not open this. It's a way of discouraging tinkering with this because you have to have a special device in order to do it. It's an uncommon kind of screw that most people won't automatically have, and so it's not likely that a user will just casually open this up just to see what's happening. Now those screws are cheap. Like you can get those. You can get a kit for like $8 that has a whole bunch of different bits and tips like that. But sometimes these are called security screws because their purpose isn't just to hold this thing together, it's to keep people out. And that's that's a decision that Nintendo has made to influence my behavior and to limit the set of available interactions with this thing. So I mean that's a kind of economic materiality that's evident in this device. Another one, if you think about it, is just the terms of like the domestic context. So this is an artifact of domestic media. This is the one that has a battery in it because my kids and we've been playing Smash recently, Smash Bros with it, and it's fun. This particular Wiimote, if I remember correctly, actually came from my parents. We are on our third Wii, and we also have a Wii U. So we've been playing the Wii U much more than the Wii. So this particular object is not just doesn't exist in some kind of a priori abstract state. This has a specific material history. So my parents bought this probably 10 years ago, and they used it a little bit, but mainly they bought it because they wanted it to be something fun that we could play with when we visited them. Our Wiis, we broke 2 of them, and so they were like, well, do you want ours? And so they gave us their Wii and their Wiimotes with it, and so that's where this one came from. So the yellowing on it, there's a little bit of a marking on it from the rubber holder that it used to have. All of the specific, all those little things up there add up to the material specificity of this particular artifact, and they leave a trace that has a particular story to it. It might not be a super interesting story, but that's not the point. The point is to think about all those traces and all those connections into the domestic context that this came from. So you can think about it here, and this little story or analysis that Hurtama gives us of the Magnavox Odyssey Squared ad, I think, is a good example of the kinds of things you can read into video games and video game devices. So this is the Odyssey Squared console, and this is the ad he's talking about here. You can notice there's a dad on the left and a daughter on the right. At least that's the implication. And you can kind of see that looks like she's shot him there, his character. You can see the beam going across there. It looks like she got him. So there's sort of a haha, I got you, dad kind of look going on here between the two of them. And this is the discussion. So there's a lot of things that you can then read out of this. This is kind of doing visual rhetoric, like that's what Hurtama is talking about here when he analyzes it. But he's also analyzing this particular device that is situated in this rhetorical expression. So let's see. It is the projectile shot by the father's avatar is bouncing from a tree, whereas the daughter's avatar is about to make a direct hit at the father figure. Bang, the ad presents Odyssey Squared as a way of bonding family members, sexes, and generations, but in a playfully subversive and mischievous way. Reversing prevailing social norms, the daughter may humiliate her father without being punished, as long as it happens within the virtual world of the game. And so this is a way in which the Magnavox Odyssey Squared isn't simply a piece of technology. It's a set of ideas about how fathers and daughters relate to each other. I can tell you that and even as I was telling you about my Wii, like these are parent-child moments, right? These are ways that we have organized our relationship around this device and access a particular aspect of our relationship through this device. We've been doing I forget what it's called in Smash Bros, where it's like a board game and you move around and you play a series of matches against each other. And there's me and 3 of my kids play, so it's 4 of us. It's a 4-player game, and we I don't believe I've ever won. I think that it's usually my second daughter who is better at these things than I am, and I don't know why. I mean, I like on a head-to-head match, like I'm gonna win most of the time, but she somehow manages to win the overall board game of it most of the time. So I'm not sure why. She also seems to be kind of a prodigy at Mario Kart, so that's pretty cool. But it's something that we can sort of share, and that she can be good at, and I can be bad at, and that's okay. It's a kind of a playful competition, and that's fine. And that's the way that we're relating to each other. So that we is all about that relationship and that set of relationships, in addition to being about whatever it's doing and whatever it's capable of technologically. So these are the kinds of things, if you're looking at the lived history of your device, that I would recommend thinking about. So if it's your phone, where did you get it? Is it a hand-me-down phone, or is it a phone that you've already handed down to someone else? Were there moments when you were hiding it from someone, or like a parent limited your interaction with it? Things like that can be significant moments that the more you reflect on them, the more you unpack the series of relationships and influences and ideas that are signified by that object. And that's really the lesson of objects, is not inside necessarily. It's all the different ways that we can use this as a lens to different outsides. So it's kind of abstract to think that way, but that's what I'm challenging you to do here. In addition to that sort of the media archaeological framework, what I really appreciate about this article is the way that it talks about some interesting early media technology, domestic media technology, the stereoscope. So I don't know if you've seen these, but this is what they look like. They are pretty interesting. I'll show you this one. I mean, they're fairly common. They're they are. You can make one. I mean, it's a pretty simple technology. But this is I'm pretty sure my colleague Brenda Blevins, she studies virtual reality, and I'm pretty sure she has an antique one of these, or at least an older one. Like I've seen her with one. So these are, they're novelties. They're like, oh, neat. Let's look at this. And the idea that the family would sit around looking at stereopticon slides, like that's a domestic thing to do at home. So that's a good one. The other one that I think is pretty cool is the zoetrope, and these are also kind of optical toys or devices that you can build yourself, and they're fun to look at and play with. There's a couple of different versions of these, right? So this is the zoopraxiscope. There's a bunch of really complicated names for these. Yeah, phenakistoscope, that's another one. And they're pretty interesting. They're pretty entertaining. And these are different ways to use printing technology in this case to make something appear lifelike. And this idea that you would do this kind of thing at home is an idea that emerges in the 19th century. The idea of a home as a place for entertainment is something that had to be invented and had to be developed, and it developed along class lines and with gendered relationships. And these are the things that developed mainly in the 19th century, at least in Europe and the United States. So that's the story that these tell. And they're really fascinating. They're also interesting as part of the history of cinema. This is something that, like, you can go to the movie theater and watch a movie, or you could sort of bring the movie home with something like this. And of course, it's not as big of a scale as the thing you could go pay money to see at a theater, but it's kind of neat, and it's kind of like that, and we can look at it together, and isn't this cool? So that's the kind of thing that this article is great at helping us learn more about. So take a look at megalethoscope. They all have these great names. These old media devices. It's taking a minute to load there, but some pretty good images. And Erkki Huhtamo has a website, I believe, with a lot of his, like, he collects these things. So let's see, if I remember correctly, he's got a lot of it online. Yeah, so you can see a lot of these devices here. Yeah, cool. So these are, what are these? Phantasm magic lanterns, right? So these are other, essentially ancient media devices, and some great pictures here. This is, zooscopes. And I believe he also has a YouTube channel where he goes through these things. So if you're at all interested in like just media history, these are just fascinating things to look at. And it would be cool to have some of these on campus, or some way we could, play with these. That's a fun thing to do. But of course, we can just look for now. So just take a look and see if you can think about like, this is the field of media archaeology. So archaeology invites us to think about the past. That probably is what you think of. So it's easy, I think, to think of Erkki Huhtamo in the 21st century as an archaeologist going into the past to look at devices from a couple hundred years ago in some cases. In our case, we're talking about something like this, but we're still doing archaeology. It's just archaeology of the present. So it might help to think of yourself as a researcher from the future. Like, let's say that you were a 23rd century scholar of media history. What would you be saying about the Samsung Galaxy S7 Active? And what kind of story would you tell about this one that I'm owning and that I've dealt with right now? That might be another way to think about lived history. It's kind of through the lens of the future. So basically, my hope is that you will... Actually, maybe I'll link to this. It's pretty good. I'll say... I'll add this link here in Slack. So yeah, read the article, but check out the website too. Pretty interesting stuff. Okay, so as far as the object lesson assignment, it is, hopefully well explained here. There's a lot of stuff, but it's all here, so hopefully that makes sense. Your ultimate thing that you're producing is a timeline using Timeline.js. That said, there are other tools that you can use to make interactive timelines, and if there's one that you find lets you present a better end product, then that's okay. Probably just let me know. There's some things I would not recommend. Like, I don't recommend just making a slideshow or a PowerPoint kind of presentation. I don't want you to do that. I want you to do something a little bit more advanced. So Timeline.js is I think a good way to do this, but there's also what are they called? StoryMap.js. If you happen to know locations for specific events, that's a way to put time and space together. There's a lot of very similarly named things. So we're talking about Timeline.js mainly. There's also something called Storyline.js. There's something called StoryMap.js. There's something called TimeMapper.js. I don't think there's a time story or a StoryTime.js, but there probably should be. It's just funny how they all ended up with similar names. Okay, so I know some of you have started. You've at least chosen your object, which is great. But I don't know if you've made it very far into the actual work for this. So I imagine many of you may still be, of course, working on it tonight, tomorrow, maybe even over the weekend. If that's the case, if you're still working on it, you should always feel welcome to reach out and ask for help or advice, even if it's after when it was due. Like, you don't have to apologize for that or feel embarrassed. Just get in touch. We'll figure out how to do it. I want to make sure that you can complete something successful here. That's my main goal. Okay, so I think I'm out of things to talk about, but mainly, you've got your work here for the object lesson. You've got some revisions for your web literacy articles, and you should write a weekly reflection and report to let me know what you did for week 3, what you looked at, what you learned. You've got different Slack channels to add to for some of the things that I assigned for you to look at this week, so that should also be part of your week 3 reflection and report. And yeah, I think that's about all I had to say. So if you do have any questions that you'd like for me to answer on the stream, just about to wrap it up. So this is your chance to get those in. Otherwise, I'll just wrap up in a few minutes here, or not even minutes. I'm just wrapping up. 3 viewers, so. And people online in Slack, but Don't see anybody typing, so I suppose that means that you don't have any questions at the moment. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. If you do have questions, of course, you should know how to reach out. So please do. Okay, well, this will be my last stream, so have a good weekend, and I'll see you again Monday. I'll send some instructions, and I think maybe next week I will probably do what I did this week. Like, I'll go ahead and publish all the notes for 4 days next week. Although some of the instruction for next week will be a bit more granular, like a bit more kind of maybe even one-on-one instruction, so I'm not sure how to do that exactly yet, but I'll let you know. Okay, thanks for watching, have a good weekend, and don't forget to submit your reflections. See ya.